This is the Amp Hour Podcast, released October 21st, 2018. Episode 412. 3-cent micros and thousands of LEDs.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Mike Harrison from Mike's Electric Stuff.
And what's that echo sound I can hear? That's the lack of Chris. He's not here this week. It's just us.
Yeah, he's skiving off.
Awesome. Welcome back.
Yeah.
How long's it been?
Oh, ages. It's about almost, about once a year or something on average.
Yeah, I know you've been on a couple of times with Chris.
Yeah, I think
because you were like overseas. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yep. Gallagher, because you guys often find yourself in the same country, don't you, or something?
Oh, well,
like
I have done on occasions, Belgrade or Pasadena or wherever. Well, I went to Make a Fair this year in New York, but he wasn't there.
Oh, right. Yeah, so how was that?
Yeah, it's good. It was, the New York I've not done before, so it's like a different crowd of cool people. And again, most of the interesting stuff was like the evening events, so sort of talking to people, comparing gadgets, and this sort of
these are just
flashy things.
Right, these are private, hack things.
Well, private-ish,
like, private-ish,
yeah.
Exactly. So did you go over there just for that?
Yeah, it was like Make a Fair plus like a couple of days tourism, a day or two tourism either side sort of thing, just wandering around various bits of New York.
Yep,
I've
cool.
not been there for like about 20 odd years.
Yeah. How do you find New York?
Yeah, it's it's pretty much as expected, just ridiculously busy, crowded, noisy.
Yep. Smelly, dirty.
Yeah. Same sort of, and the transport system is pretty decrepit. Where I was staying out near the where the Maker Fair was in area called Flushing in Queens, and it's where the subway runs on like the overhead tracks over the road, which obviously makes the whole road really dark and dingy, but just it looks so like rusty, and I'm sure it's safe, but anything isn't direct safety related does seem in need of a great deal of care and TLC. It's just and just the noise when the train went past was just unbelievable. It was going clattering over the rail joints directly overhead. It was just ridiculous.
So we
were a bit spoiled in London. Our system isn't great, but it is generally pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good when I was there, but granted it was quite a while back. But I was pretty impressed with the underground, system and stuff. And I know you locals would probably disagree, but I was kind of impressed coming from Sydney, whose public transport infrastructure sucks. Yeah. So yeah. So what have you been up to this last couple of years? Just still doing contract?
Same sort of business area led stuff. I've actually just stuck a load of new projects on my website, whitewing.co.uk.
I see that.
Some sort of fairly recent stuff. Annoyingly, a lot of the stuff recently has been basically making our own LED strips, because we can't. There aren't really sources of really good quality LED tape.
Right.
What I would really love is someone like Osram and TI to get together and do their own like chip, driver plus LED in one package.
Got it. And they're guaranteed high quality LEDs.
Exactly,
is that the problem?
And also just the other problem with like the 2812, for example. The one wire is fine, but the problem is you've only got 8 bits per color, which means you don't really have any global dimming.
Right.
The APA 102, which is the 2-wire one, is better in that you've got SPI. It's much easier to drive. You've got I think 5 bits of global control, but the PWM starts getting quite slow once you do that. And it's the 102 isn't actually even constant current. If your supply voltage drops from like 4.5 to 4 volts, your intensity drops.
Oh.
So it's all a bit.
Wow. Yeah, that's not terrific for the kind of stuff you're doing. Consistencies, yeah. So the global control would be important for, I assume, for your art installations, because you're always like dimming the whole lot. And if you've got 10,000 LEDs.
If you've got just some pattern going on that's using all 256 intensity levels, That's it. If you want to then dim that down, you then start eating into those intensity levels, and 256 isn't enough anyway, because you generally need to do gamma. If you want to do a nice smooth fade from like off to on, you need to do gamma correction. So you need really a minimum of 12 bits control to do that.
8 bits isn't enough. I'm quite surprised by that.
Because basically it's a roughly square law. Basically, if you take an 8-bit, literally an 8-bit linear thing, and do a linear fade from 0 to 256. The bottom, you'll see like about 16 steps at the bottom, and then it all just looks like on.
Right. So is this the eye? This is the eye response doing this? Yeah. Because the LED is actually linear light output pretty roughly.
It's eye response. And a very good first approximation is if you've got say 12-bit hardware. If you take it, 8-bit values are fine if you then post-correct them. So if you take your 8-bit value, square it, and then use the top however many bits you've got in your hardware, that works really well. And ideally you want 10 you can just about get away with, 12 is fine. So you can do a really nice smooth fade from like all the way off to all the way on, and it looks fairly linear and even.
So there's more magic going on there than... you would think. Can you explain the gamut correction for us?
It's and that term originates back from CRT days, because the phosphor on a CRT again is non-linear, so cameras pre-correct that, because obviously it's easier to do that in the camera than all the TVs. But gamma correction in general is basically just meaning putting some sort of translation curve between your input values and your output values. And say in the case of LEDs, or I think light sources in general, I've never looked into the detailed science of it, but empirically is what it actually looks like. It's a roughly square law. So, for example, if you want double the brightness, you have to give it 4 times as much power.
Right.
So you're just applying an inverse to what to the eye response.
And that's different for R, G, E, and B, right?
No, I don't think there's enough difference to... If you're going for a really precise colour, then maybe, but the vast majority of the stuff I do is like white anyway, because it's so much more power efficient. It's like, 5 to 10 times more power efficient in terms of the amount you get out for a white LED versus RGB. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that I do now is RGBW, so that you use the white to give you the punch and the power, and then the RGB just tints it.
I didn't know you could get RGBWs.
What I tend to do for the smaller stuff, most of the stuff I do uses a lot of quite small LEDs, so I tend to use an RGB LED and a white LED next to it. The higher power ones, you can get them all in one device, and you can get RGBW LED tape now, because they've realised that for decorative applications, RGB is horrible. I mean, if you've ever seen RGB trying to do white, it just looks horrible.
You're right.
Because you've got three dyes, each of which has an intensity and a peak wavelength variation. So trying to match those is just not going to happen.
Even if you put a white phosphor lens over the front of it?
Well, that becomes a separate
But then,
thing.
of course, it ruins it, right? Because then you can't get out the RGB. You might as well have a white LED.
Okay. So you just stick a white LED next to it, and that gives it means that you can do subtle pastel colours rather than horrible disco garish stuff, and it means you get fairly decent efficiency.
Right, because a white LED is just a blue LED with a phosphor. Right, so effectively, is that still the case?
Yes,
or have they got some new whiz-bang thing?
No, that's it.
Still covers it, right?
Yeah. I mean, you occasionally get things like these, the high CRA stuff. They add like an amber or a red along with the white, just to tint it,
just to give the broader spectrum, kind of. Yep. Got it. Okay.
I don't think they've yet got phosphors that can actually do that, so they tend to, all the ones I've ever seen just have some additional LEDs.
I didn't know that they corrected that. That's how they improved the CRI. I thought it was just more carefully controlled phosphors and LEDs or whatnot.
Maybe there are some cleverer phosphors out there. I've not looked in that much detail. It's possible there are. I don't know.
Fascinating. There's just so much science behind LEDs. It's really and how the eye perceives them and stuff like that. I find it really remarkable.
Yeah.
You could do a PhD thesis on it.
And there's also things which again I've never looked into the science, but purely empirically is what I call the point saturation effect. Is that if you look at an array of LEDs and you're just looking at the LEDs, the eye tends to saturate on the point. So you don't tend to see grayscales. You just see, this thing is on. You don't really get much gradation. Whereas if you then stick a diffuser in front of that, you then see for example, you start seeing the differences from lead to lead. But because if you imagine you've got this really bright thing in your field of view, the eye is basically adjusting itself, and all it sees is this bright blob, and it doesn't really give you any indication of how bright it is. So the difference between like diffuse and non-diffuse is huge, certainly at close up. As you move to the distance, obviously the distance acts as a diffuser, but there's lots of things like that you just only notice once you start playing with this stuff. I'm sure there's science behind it, but...
Right, so do you find yourself putting diffusers on, have to put diffusers on these various projects, like custom ones? Or
depends on the application. Anything that's viewed vaguely close up, yes, pretty much needs a diffuser. Stuff that's further away, then the distance does that. But generally, if you want something that looks nice and subtle and not dotty, some people like dotty. I mean, some people like that effect. But if you want to just create a blob of light or like a strip of light, then you generally do need to put some diffusion of some sort.
And that's pretty much up to the artist, isn't it? Though.
Yeah.
Do they have a clue about these LED stuff, or
you through experience? Right. Yes, different customers have different backgrounds. Some of them have actually got lighting designers on board who know some of it. But I mean, I've had some hilarious. Probably the best one was. This was a large conference table, which was made of corian, which is like an acrylic silica type mix. This is fine worktop, but if you machine it really thin, it works a quite nice diffuser. So they made this beautiful conference table, which had LED strips, like an array of strips inside it. The idea is that when you go to a meeting, you press a button, the bar starts, and then it starts reducing. So it's like a timer for your conference.
Right.
So they made this thing. They tested it in the factory. The client came down. Yeah, that's fine. That looks great. They then installed it in a corner office, which had windows both sides. And guess what? It didn't
just
look bright enough.
They couldn't see it.
Yeah, they didn't appreciate how good the eye is at compensating between artificial light and sunlight. So at the last minute, I think we added another 4 sets of LED strips in there just to boost it up.
Wow. And that depends on whether or not you're on one side of the building or the other, whether you get the full sun coming through.
I think it was basically just daylight versus artificial light. It was as simple as that.
Yep. Which is a big difference, because your average office, I think do you know what the legal requirement in the UK is? Because here I think it's like 200 lux on your desk. That's the legal, which isn't much.
No. But if you've ever played with like LDRs or any photo sensor, just the difference between daytime and night, artificial is like factors of like 100 or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's enormous. Just having a window changes from 200 to 5,000 lux or something.
But of course,
it's
the eye is so
absolutely enormous.
Good that you don't really.
The eye is fantastic. Yeah. It's a phenomenal thing. What is it like? How many orders of magnitude?
I have no idea. Lots.
It's ridiculous. It's like some 140 dB dynamic range or something. It's just insane. So I noticed, I'm looking through all your projects here, and they're all just. Am I wrong that almost every one is a LED project?
Yeah, pretty much. Say that there's a few things like we've done some stuff with large LCDs. If you go down to the digital,
of course. I remember the LCD ones. Yeah,
but. The one thing that I would really like to do that nobody seems to have done yet is a large-scale e-ink type thing.
Right,
Because, of course, that would be super low power, super high contrast. That what I'd like is something like a 100mm square single pixel e-ink device.
Yes,
please.
Right, just a 1 pixel,
yeah.
Can you get custom e-ink displays? I think you can.
You probably can. Certainly when e-ink first came out, all they were interested in was like Kindles and the millions and million markets. Obviously, you can now get smaller ones, and we may be now getting towards the point where you can get custom ones in moderately sensible sizes. I don't think anyone's really looked at that recently. But actually, something that one of the reasons my voice sounds a bit dodgy is talking to people all day at the UK Electronics exhibition. And there's actually a couple of interesting things I saw there. One was because one of the problems with LCDs, of course, is because you've got the polarizers, even when it's totally clear, you're losing 50% of the light because of those polarizers.
Yep.
And there was one company that had some sort of shutter glass, which basically went from completely clear to like a 50% mirror type finish, which was interesting.
Oh,
that was
right,
very early stages. But I said, look, I've got a potential project coming up late next year, which wants probably something like 2,000 or 3,000 somethings in a big array. And it would be nice if they weren't led, so they're going to sort of go away and talk to their people and see if they can come up with something, just a rough idea on pricing.
Wow.
But the other thing that was interesting was a company that specialises in like scientific optical stuff. Apparently, it was founded by the guy that invented the auto-darkening welding masks that then sold it to 3M.
Yeah.
And this was an LCD that changes the transmitted light colour according to applied voltage.
It changes the colour.
Yeah, it's like a tunable filter. I have no idea. It's magic, as far as I think they've got a couple of different layers, and it does some weird magic diffraction stuff. But literally, they had this demo where literally they were shining a white torch from it, and it was going from white to yellow to pink sequentially on the transmitted light. So I think a big chandelier or something like it's like digital stained glass almost.
Yeah, that is brilliant. So that'd be an interesting art piece, wouldn't it? To do like a church stained glass window that just changes colour. Wow.
I think you have to pick the colours at manufacturing time. It's not like a full spectrum thing.
I got it, yeah.
But it'll show two different colours. You can do a lot with that. But I think a few of my customers got excited. Oh, let's take a colour monitor and take the backlight off. But the problem is, first you lose 50% in the polarizers, then you lose two-thirds through the RGB stripe filters, so you end up with, at best, about 15% of the light coming through. I mean, if you've ever taken apart a monitor and looked at how bright the actual backlight is, it's like you can barely look at it.
It's crazy, I know. And I would assume that this new whiz-bang Blackmagic technology would have quite a loss too. I can't imagine it's just going to be magically.
It does.
Not
but
much.
The fact you've got the colour, that's what gives you the. I mean,
exactly.
the thing that I did, that digital ornithology, that's the only one I've done with clear LCDs. I've done some stuff with LCDs that have like a reflector on the back. Which works reasonably well. The only other one I've seen, there's a really good one that was done in the USA, and it's like a bird museum where they've got this ribbon of LCDs, and they make really good use of the backlight from the skylights. And it's like a flock of birds sort of flying overhead, but that's actually one of the nice ones. But say if you're using clear LCDs, it's really dependent on having the lighting to actually make it work, because the 50% at best means the things they always look grey. So these clear ones look quite interesting, but obviously I have no idea what the costs are. Whether they're going to be the costs are going to be viable, and B, whether the manufacturer is actually going to be interested in talking to us.
Got it.
Yeah, they're interested in making 1-inch square scientific windows with dead flat spectral response and all this sort of stuff. I say, look, I just want something that looks pretty.
But I think if you went, said, oh, look, we need, 3,000 of these for some installation, I think they'd go, oh, we didn't figure on this market,
Yeah, possibly. We'll see. I've asked them to quote just as a sum. Okay, look, if I wanted 100 mil square and I wanted 1,000 of them, just give me some idea. But both of these are products that aren't, they don't even have sample units that you can buy yet.
Right.
So, what I'd like to do, just literally bought a little inch square sample, and I'll just take it to my clients and show them, because quite often things will come from, that's an interesting bit of tech. I'll buy something, do a little demo unit, and then a project will come from that. There's nothing like having it in your hand to inspire ideas.
So it's basically just really talking at the product, like the product concept stage, almost. It's what if I had one of these?
I think some of it may be a case of they've developed this thing and they don't really necessarily know exactly what they want to use it for, so they've done some demo pieces. But we'll see. We'll see if they buy it.
Right. Nice. So what happens to these? Because art installations typically just go up for a certain amount of time and then they rip them down. What happens to all these?
Most of these are permanent.
They are.
The bigger
Okay.
ones.
Right.
So there's some temporary stuff. I've done a few temporary things. Obviously, some of the design, design side of things is somewhat different, whether you're doing a temporary or a permanent thing. But most of the big ones are permanent.
Yep. Oh, okay, yeah, like the airport one and stuff, that's hanging in the airport. It's going to be there for, 10, 15 years until they, change their mind and want a different look.
And if you're lucky, they've even got a maintenance budget to keep it going.
Oh, okay. So do they hire you to maintain it?
No. It's because it's such a random thing, it's very hard to find third parties. My clients generally handle that side of things.
Okay.
Because actually one of the... when I was in New York, one of the things I actually went to one of the big installations that was done a few years ago that I've never seen in person, which was the iPod Nano thing, which again, that's been maintained and still looks really good.
Okay. And any failures on that, or do they like if one fails, they swap them out?
Quite a few initially. I don't know whether there's been any. I asked them the other day. I don't think they've had much in the way of failures over time. But I think once it was burnt in, I think it was pretty good.
Because a lot of these installations you would notice, like if something's out, right? Some of them you wouldn't, but some it's like, oh god, one's
the
failed.
Installations I like are the ones which are like a random cluster of things. So if your thing isn't working, you don't really notice. But this was like a big array, so even one out is very noticeable.
So, do you have any sort of like rough gut feel stats for like the failure rate of LEDs? Like, because you're usually like driving them full, like high power type stuff.
I'm extremely conservative.
Oh, okay.
I very rarely drive a LED at more than 50% of its rating, and sometimes a lot less than that.
Interesting.
I would sooner like throw more LEDs at it and run them.
Got it.
I take the paranoid engineer, think of everything that could go wrong, and often scare the crap out of my customers when I explain all the things that could go wrong.
You don't want to tell the muggles.
Well, the worst thing you can say
details.
is, yes, it's all fine, it's all going to work, because, if you tell them everything could go wrong, then it doesn't, then they're happy.
Yeah, okay. But they wouldn't... do you find that they often don't understand all the technical stuff you're telling them?
I think most of the customers I've been working with for quite a while, so they do now. And I generally know how to pitch things. I know what their level is. And I know how to pitch things. I don't like working with people that have no in-house technical, because it means that I've got to then handhold them. Exactly. Our customer's got an in-house guy that I can throw him aboard. He can wire it up without reverse polaritying it and smoking it. He can get data going to without me. There's nothing I hate more than just writing noddy instructions for people that don't know what they're doing. I absolutely hate that, and I'll quite often just not even take on jobs if I get a sniff that they don't really know what they're doing. It's just not worth my time.
You just turn them down,
Yeah.
Now, what percentage of jobs would you turn down?
Roughly? I'm trying and failing to sort of not take on so much so I can do some more work on my own stuff. A lot of the stuff is repeat business, but I would say easily once a week I get a random query from someone I've never heard of. Right. Sometimes it's XYZ recommended you, and I don't know who XYZ is because it's a second or third hand recommendation, or they've come across the website or come across my website via one of my clients' things. So things from just total randomers I've never heard of from before, unless it's something that looks really interesting, I'll generally just turn down, because I just want to try and not be doing stuff, because I don't need to take the jobs on for the money, and I'd sooner have the time. But that's sort of only partially working.
Do you ever get sick of LED projects, or do you like working on stuff that
I like stuff that's different. I'd really love to do something for these on these new LCDs. Mm-hmm. I'd love to do something with the ink. We've done some stuff with big OLED, like big sheet OLEDs before, but it's really pretty much the only game in town. So it's a case of interesting arrangements. We've done quite a few like ring type stuff using like thin PCBs like wrapped round into rings, and unusual mechanical arrangements and so on. That's where I'm starting to get a bit more into some of the mechanical sides of things, which adds a bit more of an interest to it. But every job's different, and every job you learn something.
Yep. Would you like turn down like a job like, I need this protocol converter, that serial converter board, please? No,
I basically don't do any stuff for production these days.
Right.
It's basically design it, build it, next job, because the next new job is always more interesting than what I'm working on now. So
got it.
Production stuff, you've got all the documentation and loads of other stuff, but also there's a big, you give them a prototype, they go and test it, then it comes back 3 months later, then something else, then 3 months later you've forgotten about it. Whereas this is generally more, the whole time scale is a lot more compressed. I've got a lot more control. If it's a small job, I'll just run it on my pick and place. I don't have to deal with subcontractors. So it's just it's easier. It's a lower proportion of the boring bits, basically.
Got it. How's the pick and place going? It's still churning
works.
along.
Maintenance wise, lie idle for a month, then it will get used to something, but it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely.
Right.
Because just dealing with subcontracting, I've yet to find. I had a really good subcontractor where I could just throw them an order. I didn't even bother getting them to quote because I knew the price would be good. I knew the quality would be fine, but the guy retired a couple of years ago, and I've yet to find someone that's as good as them in terms of they were just the right size. It's a perennial problem dealing with subcontractors. I hate it. So if I can do something myself,
you do it.
Exactly.
We have to, once again, we probably have to, for the benefit of our audience who see you successfully using a pick and place machine, I've got to say that if you think you have a need for a pick and place machine, there's probably a 90% chance that you don't.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's changing with the decreasing cost, the entry cost.
Okay. Right.
There are certainly a lot more people now who would have a genuine use to have a pick and place machine in their business. If you are churning out relatively low numbers of boards, a high mix, you need stuff turned around quickly, then it's becoming a much more attractive option. As long as you understand that it is going to take you some time to get the process sorted out, get all the software flow.
Of course.
I spent quite a long time getting a very slick software process. So, for example, all my PCB library parts are the same way around as the tape in my feeders. So if I stick a LED on the board that I've used before, I don't even need to check it's going to be the right way around because I know it's going to be because the orientation's right. So it's little details like that. But obviously the reduced entry cost is, people are starting to see, that looks interesting, and in some cases it is, but it is something, until you have actually used a pick and place machine, you only know a small proportion of the issues. Because it's not one big problem, it's lots and lots and lots and lots of tiny little issues.
Kill you.
A classic example here. I occasionally do jobs on like ridiculous timescales, and this was one of them. It was to make something like a 20 by 25 white lead matrix on a semi-flexible board to go around. It's for a film shoot. They wanted to have text scrolling around a cup. From initial discussions with clients and delivering 10 of these was slightly over a week.
Wow, nice.
Which for me, because, for example, a lot of the software stuff I already had, the driver architecture I already had, so it's basically a PCB layout job, an assembly job.
Got it.
Which would have been fine, except the LEDs that basically we had to use the LEDs, they were just like 0603 or 085. It might be an 0805 white LED, nothing special, but we could only use the stuff that DigiKey had enough of stock of, so that was our choice of LED. And the tape they came on was really, really thin, so that when my machine fed it, the tape would advance and the LED would just bounce straight out of the tape.
Oh, no.
My half-day contingency was more than taken up with modifying my feeder to just make it only lose, I think I'll get it down to about 10%. So fortunately, I think the whole bill was like about 22,000 LEDs. So fortunately, DigiKey did have one more reel in stock that I needed just to cover all the ones that I'd lost.
Wow!
And there was enough time to get it, but there's just
hang on, 22,000.
Yeah, it's about 2,000 LEDs on each board.
Why did you need that many LEDs to scroll around a?
It was about 2,000 LEDs per board, and they wanted graphics. And I don't remember the exact job parameters. Off the top of my head.
Wow.
But, actually, I've got it in front of me. It's about, I think the pitch looks about 3 by 3 millimeters, and this whole thing is about 70 by 100. And it was actually done on. It's quite. I found a company that will make 0.1 millimeter FR4 boards. And
nice.
It's the stuff they use for the inside layer of multi-layer, so it's not an exotic material.
It is the pre-preg. I've done that before. It's stock stuff.
Yeah.
They order these pre-pregs and they have them in stock. They use them for people who don't know to build up the multi-layer boards.
Actually do that as a finished board. So I don't know if maybe they've made up jigs or something. Yep. Obviously, it's really floppy, so that
they're super flexible, aren't they?
But the nice thing is, unlike the Mylar stuff, is literally you can just tape it down to a bit of standard FR4 kept on tape, pick and place and reflow it as if it was an ordinary PCB. You don't have to use a vacuum bed or anything exotic like that because it wants to stay flat, whereas the Kapton stuff wants to curl up as soon as you look at it, and you've got to tension it and so on. But they're great.
Job. The thin PCBs are fantastic. But as you said, you've got to find a manufacturer who's willing to just give you that pre-preg as a finished board. It was just pure chance
that I'd seen another job that one of my customers had done on another job using that material. I thought, well, that's interesting. Who makes that?
Yep.
So just pure luck that I happened to know that. And they turned around, I think it was 10 of these boards, they turned around in 2 days. And that was, I think, £60 each for like 100 by 80 boards, which, is, I don't know.
Well, it's not much for that sort of turnaround. And that sort of low volume. Yep. Yeah. Sweet. So let's get on to the stuff where both of us found interesting recently is the 3-cent microcontroller.
Yes.
Why do you find... Because a lot of people make the argument, and it's a reasonable argument, that, well, look, why bother learning a new platform when you can get a PIC one for, like, what's the cheapest PIC? 30 cents, maybe?
The 10 series? On the SOT 23 something. Yeah.
Sorry, how much?
I think it's about 40-odd cents, something of that order.
Right.
For like the SOT 23.5, SOT 23.6 rather.
But this is an order of magnitude cheaper.
Yeah, the answer is if you're making crap loads of things. Unless you're up into well into the 100Ks, it doesn't really matter if your micro is 3 cents or 8 cents.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's the point at which that cost delta is worth the effort of using a weird chip.
Yes, that's right.
If you save, 10 cents on your bill of material on 100,000, that's what 10,000 odd. So if you can spend less than that amount of money on the engineering, you're into profit. So actually, what I found more interesting was the LCSC website was a bit of a sort of revelation to me. I was vaguely basically is it LCSC? Yeah, LCSC.com.
Yes, that's it.
And it's an offshoot of the JLC cheap PCB guys. And I was vaguely aware of that they had a part site, and I think I'd vaguely skimmed through it in the past and assumed it was just like jelly bean stuff. But I've been recently looking at a potential sort of consumerish project, which is sort of high volume. So I just started having a look at this, just to look at, do they do interesting LED drives? And I just found this huge list of all these weird Chinese chips.
I know, they're
half
great.
Of which with only Chinese data sheets. And I literally spent... I've so far spent 2 complete evenings just going through ordering a few of these, partly to test straight away, but partly just so I've got something on the shelf. So, if I have a job that needs a 10-cent buck regulator, I've got one on the shelf ready that I can test.
Exactly.
So
I just went and bought a reel of, 10-cent 3.3 volt voltage regulators.
Yeah, same.
Because they're 10 cents.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
so
it's
as and when I
nuts.
get a project where I actually care about that volume, I've got the thing. If it was just like one of my normal commercial jobs, I would just whack a microchip MCP 1700 in there. But if it's something, I mean, because obviously I've been doing all the big stuff for a long time. This commercial consumer thing that I'm looking at doing, it's the challenge of doing stuff super cheap, and I've actually got a good mind to actually just design something with just stuff from LCSC, just like a little LED array badge or something as a little toy. Just let's use the cheapest bits I can, get it assembled in the cheapest assembly service, just for the hell of it, and see how it comes out.
Yep, I'm tempted to do similar. It's just I've ordered some parts as well. And I intend to play around.
The other day is they do FFC cables for 5 cents.
Oh, do they?
I mean, unfortunately, the range is a bit weird, but there's a pretty decent range. It's not particularly well catalogued, but I've now got just almost a half shoebox full of all the all the 5 and 10 way 1.5 mil FFC cables they do, because I do things like linking up LED boards. I use FFC a lot.
And they cost you cents each, so you can afford to kit yourself out.
I've been paying £1 each from DigiKey.
Yeah.
Because the nice thing about FFCs is that they're off the shelf. You don't have to get the cables made up. The connectors are nice and low profile and fairly cheap, but also it's the only type of connection where the cable will go through a hole that doesn't need to be made bigger for the connector that's on the end of it.
Exactly. So you just need a tiny slot in the PCB. Yeah. What, like a 1 millimeter wide slot?
The smallest slot you can make, basically. The stuff's actually but so I've actually used those a lot in the past on various LED installations. And what was really annoying is that before I discovered, literally the day before I discovered this, I'd ordered about 50 quid's worth of FFC cable from DigiKey for a project. Really irritating. One of the things about LCSC is what I slightly do worry or wonder about is how many of these lines are lines they actually regularly keep in stock, and half of them are just literally the leftovers of a job they've ordered. Obviously, there's some stuff they've only got 1s and 2s in stock, which obviously you can ignore. But all the out of stock, is this something they ever intend to restock until they get another order for it? Obviously, there's some stuff that they've got like 100K.
Ask them, actually.
Yeah.
I'll ask them because I've got a contact there now.
Yeah.
They contact me, so I might ask them, whether or not, like, do they want to be the Asian Mouser and DigiKey?
Well, it's probably a mix, but what would be good is if there's some indication on the product page to say this is a regularly stocked item or not.
Or a one-off buy.
Which is one-off buys can be fine if you've got one project, but obviously if you're designing something in, okay, they're usually cheap enough you can buy your whole production in one go before you commit the PCB. But I think they're actually going to be at Electronica. I'm probably going to be going to Electronica this year, and I think they're going to be there as well. So depending on how good
that's the Germany one.
Yeah, that's just the huge indicator. It's like about 10 halls of.
And you can't, even if you have 3 full days there, you can't see everything.
You have to be select, but it's fairly well grouped into halls. So, like, you can just omit a complete hall and know that that's something specialist. I mean, the first time I went, they had a complete hall of Chinese suppliers, and it was the most annoying experience. Literally, you'd walk up and people would be coming up to you, offering their business card, PCB, and all the stands looked like they did exactly the same stuff. And you sort of walk around a stand and you get this sort of girl with a little clipboard literally following you 2 paces behind, waiting to take your order. So you had to literally get the right walking pace so you could walk through, look at stuff just fast enough to like avoid them coming out to you. It's just hilarious.
It sounds like So that's the in real life equivalent to PCB spam on my forum. Like it's because they just keep spamming the forum. Every single Asian PCB manufacturer.
Actually, one thing I just found on one of the interesting looking things I found on LCSC. If you look up MUN12A, it's a little DC to DC converter module, and it looks like it's this little PCB with an inductor on the top in about an SO8 format.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. I've got for his look at. So I thought, well, okay, I'm sure, where's the chip? Oh, it's probably on the inductor. I unsoldered the inductor and I ended up holding just a PCB, what looked like a PCB with 3 passives on it. They've actually embedded, the chip is embedded inside the PCB.
Oh, it's inside the PCB. They've actually done a
12-volt point of low converter for like 20 cents.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So if you look up, I think MUN12 will give you...
Yeah, I've got it. In quantity, they're actually like under 15 cents.
And the higher power ones, I think, are probably the same chip with a bigger inductor on it. There's ones up to like 6 amps.
Wow. Oh, what's the copper coming out on the edge of the board? That's in an internal heat sink.
So it looks a bit like a power pad SO.
Yeah.
So it's like I think you can mount it just like a power pad SO, but it's got the inductor built in.
Right.
And so I'll have to actually. I bought about 5 volt. When I've got time, I'll actually peel one down. I tried X-raying it. And you can't really see much, but I think it will need to be peeled down to see it. But yeah, it's quite an advanced manufacturing technique for a 20-cent chip from a brand you've never heard of.
That's insane. So 95% efficiency. It's literally the size and not much bigger than the actual inductor itself.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
with an SO8 footprint with just basic PCB pads.
Wow. Oh, okay. So you can do. Oh, okay. So it's an SO8 footprint.
Yes.
But it looks like it's got all 4 sides. It looks like a 4-sided thing.
No, it is an SO8 footprint on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what they show on the
can't
website.
see the pads on the bottom.
It may not be clear on the website.
Oh, I see the pads on the bottom now. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's got the power pad on the bottom with the. Yep. Wow, that is that is insane. It's cheaper to buy one of these and mount it in your project than it is to buy the individual parts and have them and lay them out on your board. Yeah,
obviously you still need a little bit of capacitors on in and out.
So these don't have the caps built in?
No. No, because obviously the caps. Okay. For a 1 amp converter, you can need maybe sort of 50 or 100 microfarads on the output of that, or certainly tens of microfarads. If you can get them.
Yeah, right. If you can get them. Were you hit by the
really.
capacitor shortage?
I'm doing small enough quantities that DigiKey have usually gone in stock. The biggest pain has been I'll send like a cut. Sometimes for the builds, I'll basically set it up with a subcontractor, get my customer to place the order on the subcontractor and send them a DigiKey basket. And I say, look, order this quickly because some of those parts will go out of stock. And okay, there will be another item, but it's another part number you've got to look up.
Got it.
So apparently it's the high voltage, high value ones that are just super unobtainium. But stuff like 100 nanofarad 603s, I've never had a problem finding like a reel or two of those. Okay, they might be like 2p each rather than a penny each, but that I don't really care about that.
Oh well, no, it doesn't matter. Nice. Anyway, I'm getting one of those programmers and the in-circuit emulator for that little micro, so I might do a project just for the kicks of it.
It'd be interesting to see what the whole emulator... It was interesting to say that there was the English data sheet on it. That was one that's probably the biggest surprise is, A, you can buy them in small quantities, and B, there's an English data sheet.
That's it.
And I had a very quick look at the idea, and it looks in fairly reasonable English. So it'd be quite interesting to see what that's actually like.
Yeah. Although I still am of the opinion, like others on the forum who've discussed this, that you're better off paying 30 cents instead of 3 cents using the pick with the platform.
Again, it all depends on your volume.
Exactly. So, there is a point where it's worthwhile.
It probably doesn't matter if it's 10 cents rather than 3 cents, but it might matter 10. There are cases where it might matter 10 versus 30.
Yes, it might.
If we're using a lot of them, it may be that you've got some of the stuff that I do. For example, I've had like a board that's got several hundred SOT 23 picks on one board for various reasons. Yep. Although things like the onboard, self-programming flash tends to disappear at the 3 cent level, which makes it a bit of a risk. And also, the other thing, if you've got any contact, is ask them about getting pre-programmed chips. Because a 3 cent micro is not a lot of use if you've got to program it yourself. But if you can pay like another cent and get them pre-programmed, then that will be a super useful.
Oh, that'd be phenomenal. Yeah, that'd be absolutely phenomenal.
Programming OTPs after they've been sold with the board is a slightly risky endeavour.
You don't want to be doing that.
One program slips and your board's trash, basically.
No, you're screwed. Forget it. No, definitely pre-programmed. But the thing with this is that it changes your thinking about how you could potentially do designs. Because if you go, I'm used to using the one big micro and I'm going to use a big 100-pin micro and I'm going to drive all these things and the traces have to run right across my board. Yeah. But, if you go, I can get a 3 cent micro or a 10 cent micro and I can put them pointer load kind of thing.
I put a huge but in just managing that many different bits of software. Can get.
No. It's if they're identical, I wouldn't have different ones, But if you got one dedicated function, is what I'm talking about. If you can just offload a simple PWM to this 3 cent micro, right? For example, then micro, whichever, or a 10 cent micro or a 30, then it changes your thinking.
Yeah, definitely
about how you can potentially design. So,
and obviously at high volumes, it's that's where it starts being interesting, but it is. I was quite surprised to see that. I must have a look at some of the other stuff. The other slightly less low end stuff as well. There's a Cortex M0 that's about 30 cents, 30 or 40 cents.
I saw that on there,
which I can't remember if there's in English. I think someone featured it on Hagday. I think someone's actually done some work on it with translating and so on, but. That looks quite interesting.
They have. Somebody actually sent me you can buy a programming board which just plugs into USB or something. I don't know. But somebody's done some work on that. And probably at that point, I would go, well, no, I'm going to use a 50 cent ARM chip instead of 30 cents or a 60 cent. It's not the order of magnitude decrease in price that. So.
Well, I think the problem, certainly, again, I've not looked, but I gather that some of the more popular lowest end STMs are getting quite hard to get hold of now because of just everyone's using them. Therefore, everyone wants them.
Right.
So
hey, what's this tiny, ridiculously tiny 7-segment display that you posted? Tell us that.
It basically
What is this?
It's designed for things like military head-up displays.
That then get optically enlarged.
They
right?
had quite a nice demo. It was like a pair of binoculars that had a built-in laser rangefinder, so you could point it at something.
Oh, of course.
With a little cross in it, and it'll pop up a little display saying how far away that thing was.
Got it.
And I had quite an interesting chat with them, and obviously the first thing I said, well, why don't you use OLEDs? And the answer is that you can't do OLEDs over the military temperature range. Whereas these they basically deposit standard LEDs onto a substrate. I don't think they integrate any of the drivers or anything. And obviously, most of the stuff is custom, and if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. But they do actually do some standard parts, which just look like little silicon diodes. So I think I've linked to the data sheet of one of them, which is the smallest one, which is a 0.8mm high 7-segment display. The issue is you need a wire bonder to use it. It looks just like a little chip. So you just literally stick it on your board and wire bond to it, and you've got. But that is actually a standard part that you can buy. So if you want to make your own little, clock rants or head-up display type thing, I can't see any real use other than through optical manipulation. But it was just a really interesting thing. So I went to this. Carol.
Yeah. Sorry. No. Continue.
I went to this electronic show this morning today, and that was probably the most interesting thing I saw, because you occasionally see like weird things. I was just going to say a bit about some of the electronic shows in the UK, because obviously I've seen your electronics thing, which is obviously a pretty small affair. But I mean, certainly, like 10, 15 years ago, there was like a big show called NEPCON up in Birmingham, and that was like about half components and half manufacturing equipment, and that was when they had like the Panasonic through-hole like insertion machines and all that sort of stuff going on, which is good to look at. And that sort of gradually died out to being just production equipment and then disappeared. And then there was like one or two shows like came and went over the years. And then Southern Manufacturing started, and that started off as about 50-50 electronics and mechanics. So it was like metal bashing services, CNC machines, plastics, all that sort of stuff. And over those years, basically the mechanical side has grown a lot. It's like the show's maybe 3 times as big as it was, and the electronic stuff has just started shrinking. Because I think the problem is with these shows, you need to get critical mass. Otherwise, the exhibitors say, "Oh, there's not many people there, therefore I'm not going to go." And certainly last year, the electronic side, it was just really, really, really feeble. It wouldn't surprise me if it disappears completely. And last year, I'm not sure how many years this. Basically, it's called the Engineering Design Show, and it's got like subtitles like Electronics Design Show, Engineering Design Show, and Embedded Design Show. And that was almost the opposite mix. The first time I went was last year. I think it might have been going a year before that, before I sort of noticed it. That's I'd be up north in Coventry. And that was mostly electronics, because the thing about Southern Manufacturing is that you never got like the big test equipment manufacturers there. You may have got a distributor, a few odd random subcontractors and so on. So it was never like as good as like the old NEPCON shows, whereas the Engineering Design Show, so this year they had Roden Schwartz, Yokogawa, Tektronix were there.
All the big hitters, yeah.
Keysight weren't there, but a few other. It was mainly electronics, but the mechanical side, there were about 3 stands selling springs. And like a couple of 3D printing and a few other things, but it wouldn't surprise me if that side of the show disappears, because it was so random and such a small part of the overall show. It just didn't really seem worthwhile. They had a few quite cool robots and so on. But so no, there was quite a few. So I found out about these interesting LCD technologies, and had a few interesting chats with various people, and did the various using grazing on all the various sort of free suites and so on they've got on the stands to.
Yeah, right.
I didn't say the 7-segment display was just something that was just such a cool little thing.
That is great. One place I think I remember seeing, not this small, but if you tear down, I think, one of the old film cameras, how they used to get, when they had, you used to be able to put like the time and date on them, or the date, right? Then they would use, I don't know if they were
like
LED,
but display type things, but without the bubble, perhaps.
Yeah, something like, and they would have those embedded in there, and then of course they had to be really tiny, because then they physically optically overlaid that onto your film image, which then gets exposed on your film.
They actually did it using just a single row of LEDs and used the fact the film was winding to actually give like a raster scan rather than have the whole array on it.
From what I remember, this is a long time ago that I tore one down. This is before the blog, and just tearing random things down.
I know.
Just because,
I hear you.
Yeah, been doing it since I was like 5, so,
Same here.
Yep. And, from memory, they did have the multiple 7-segment displays in there, so it wasn't scanned as it went through. It was... They actually projected the whole thing.
Maybe then they didn't have enough processing power to actually do the scanning
probably,
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. But I find those remarkable, those cameras with all their flat flex technology and everything else. I find how they fit to envelope design is just...
The one thing that I've never really got my head around is like things like cameras and also things like the old Walkman cassette recorders. How they design and prototype those things when they didn't have all the 3D CAD modelling stuff.
Exactly. I know. It's unbelievable. You open any Sony product and it's like, oh my God, how did they design this?
Exactly. Like things like the camcorders, like the later camcorders.
Yeah.
Which are just
They're
ridiculous.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
They are just insane. I know. And the service manuals for them were even more remarkable.
Oh, yeah. Works with all
with all the 3D exploded. It's all hand drawn and just remarkable.
The youngsters,
that was real engineering.
Know what we're talking
about. Unbelievable. I was very impressed with that.
Yeah.
This world's tiniest LED flasher that you did, I thought that was pretty neat because that was, everyone was puzzled. Like, where was the power source coming from? And I went, it's a super cap.
I think I spotted those super caps on DigiKey maybe a year ago and thought, I do. Either it's a case of DigiKey, okay, what can I find to make up the minimum order value for free shipping, or just browse through new products. And these things, I've got to get a couple of those. And it's maybe a year ago. And I thought they'll come in from them. I thought it was literally the day before I was due to go out to Maker Fairs, and I've got a collection of random LED toys that I tend to have. Anyone that's ever met me has probably seen me with these various LED toys, and some people are obviously probably going to start getting a bit bored with them, but I haven't had time to do any new ones recently, so I thought, let's make at least one new toy. So I sort of dug these caps out. I was going to make 2, but I lost one of the caps on the bench somewhere.
Oh, no.
And I just found dug around in my pile of LED to see which LED I've got that was the brightest with the lowest voltage, and had just a 6-pin pick. Annoyingly, I didn't have any of the low voltage version of that pick, so and that one will run for about 7 minutes. It may well be the low voltage one might run for a bit longer. But that was
the thing I found interesting about those caps is that they're in a ceramic package, pick and place compatible, sort of robust ceramic thing. Just like a 5x7 crystal.
Yeah, and there's a few things about the comments about using a crystal as a time base and whatever. I don't think anyone actually got the complete. Yeah, some of them got the super cap. So I don't think anyone actually got the pick. Certainly not till quite a bit later.
I posted a link to a super cap, but I don't think I got the right super cap. I got a similar one.
Yeah.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Maybe.
Yep.
So actually, the hardest bit on that was actually figuring out how to do the charging. I ended up basically soldering a very thin bit of metal onto the. So fortunately, the flat face of the super cap is connected as a negative, so I just needed to create a side terminal. I basically the charger is a 2032 plastic coin cell holder, with a square cut out of it and a pogo pin that presses the side. I'm probably going to when I get time, I'm going to make some with the low voltage pick and do another video with a bit more detail on those.
Definitely.
It got exactly the reaction that I wanted. So I'd say to someone, "Look, hold out your hand." I put it in their hand, and they just say, "What the?" It's one of those. You see something and you don't quite understand what's going on. Because it's so much smaller than the small battery that smallest battery anyone's seen. It's really funny just seeing the reaction of people to techie people. They've seen this thing and think, well, what?
What is the on timer LED? Because you can't just have it, on is it a really brief pulse?
It's 2 flashes of about a millisecond each. Something like 10 milliseconds. I did a few bit experiments and I found that a double flash looked a little bit more interesting, but also in terms of visibility, it seems to be a better than a single short flash.
Got it.
And it's like about 6 lines of code. It's just sleep, turn on, flash, sleep, turn on, whatever. The nice thing about that, I think it's got a 1 millisecond granularity on its watchdog timer, so
okay.
you can just use that. But so
you just recycled the watchdog.
You just change the watchdog timer sleep. so it's
got it.
doing almost nothing.
Nice. Yep. Yeah, I thought that was sweet.
Yeah.
That was just great.
But it's the fact is something you could show to someone taking. They just don't quite understand what they're looking at. It was just really funny.
Yeah, because people are so used to, well, it's got to have a lithium polymer battery, and I know they're X big, and it's got to have a board, and they're X big.
Even the smallest coin cell, you can get some really tiny little alkaline coin cells, but it was just so much smaller than even that.
Exactly. No, these are great. So these are the primary purpose for these surface mount supercapacitors, like RTC backup and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So
just short term. I think
short term. So they charge up
11
in the system.
millifarads, I think. So,
yes.
You'll run your RTC
the one I posted was 11 milli.
It's not like long term backup, but they're quite a nice little suit. So I knew I'd figure out something to do with them.
Yeah, exactly. They're so cool. That's the kind of thing you want to throw on your DigiKey.
I think the next one's we're going to have inductive charging, because the contact charging is a real pain.
Yeah, right. All right, let's show's almost up. Jeez, it's changed tunes recently.
Should we go through a few short news items? We can
go through a short news items. We'll do that last. Okay. One thing I wanted to talk about is you've heard that Fran Blanche has been forced out of her lab, right? And the news announcement. I'm moving my lab after 7 years. Yeah. Finally, I move out. I get my new lab next Friday. I'll be starting to move things the week after.
That's going to be fun.
That's going to be fun. But it's like I was going to reorganize the lab anyway, because if you've seen a photo of my lab, it's just shit on. It's just it's bad. And because I own it, I kind of let it degenerate, whereas maybe if I've got a rented lab, it'll be like, oh, somebody's coming around to inspect it, I've got to keep it clean, kind of thing.
Are you selling the old one, or you got subletting it to someone, or
no, I would actually I would
rent it.
Actually, I have to put new carpet in and lease it out, so if anyone wants to lease my old lab,
so you sort of combining all your spaces into one
because I have two spaces at the moment, and that was always a stopgap, because I had my lab, which is 50 square meters, and it was, I had my desk in there. I worked in there for like 4 or 5, 5 years, and it was, not much space at all. There was no windows. It's a bit depressing, working in a windowless, cramped lab for 5 years. So I thought, look, I need a bigger space, but I don't want to move the lab, and prices had just doubled in this business park in terms of like buying a space. Yeah. Like it cost me, like $800,000 plus to buy 100 square meter space. It's like, it's not going to happen. So I thought, oh, look, I'll just rent a nice temporary, for a couple of years, I'll rent a smaller space that I can move my logistics into and my editing. Yeah. My work desk. And
but
now I've got a window.
A real pain having stuff in the wrong place.
It's separate location. It kills the productivity, because if I'm sitting here editing a video and I go, oh, I'd love to include just another shot, I've got to either walk or cycle or drive to my lab, and then it's just or if I go, oh, I want to get an idea, oh, I'd love to shoot just a 10-minute video for the second channel, I've got to pack up and go to the lab. No, it's not. Anyway, so yes, I'm moving into 100 square meters, double the size, which should be enough. So
I think you should probably do some filtering in the move process.
Oh, I will. There will be filtering. Yeah. There will be filtering. There'll be extra benches. And what I've always wanted is like an island bench, in the middle that I can walk all the way around.
Instead of taking everything to the second level, literally picking up everything and saying, do I want to keep this? eBay
exactly. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. So there may be a lot of eBay.
It's generally look at something. Have I touched that within the last X years? If no, it's probably the biggest problem is the stuff which is too big or too low value to eBay, but you just can't bear to throw away.
Exactly.
That's the really hard stuff. Like obviously, there's a lot of stuff that I pull out of teardown gear that is potentially useful to somebody, but it's just a pain in the ass to do. And what I tend to do, there's one of the last sort of decent Radio Rally Hamfest type things in the UK. It's like a sort of car boot sale type format. So last year I took a transit van full of stuff up there.
Oh, I might do that. Yep.
I think I gave away about half of it. I'm quite happy to just give stuff away to someone that can use it.
Exactly. Rather than see it go to landfill, at least go to someone else.
I just basically started off with stuff on the table priced and had things say, anything on this table that's not sold by 11 o'clock is going to be free. And there's a big, huge sheet on the ground. I just kept chucking stuff on this thing, everything on this is free. And I think I came back with like 2 small crates of stuff that I wasn't going to give away. So that was very effective.
Yeah, of course.
So I would highly recommend that as a tactic.
Yep. I think I will be doing that at the next Hamfest. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, for sure. Like, because I've done that. I've done the car boot thing. You like the tarp on the ground, and I had like all these scopes, and And as time went on, the price went down and down.
Yeah, I do not want to take this stuff
I don't want to take these home. Yep. I remember though, I came home with like $5,000 cash in my pocket. Yeah. I sold a lot of stuff. It was it was
I
was
think
great.
I just basically, once I'd covered the van rental, I just sold it.
Yeah, you were happy. Yeah,
especially,
that's it.
Especially if someone seemed like really
stuff.
enthusiastic about like this stepper motor and was still saying, have I got a pound? I'll just take it. Just go and play with it.
Yeah, just take it.
I don't really need the money.
That's it.
I need the space more.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do that. So I do have a storage bunker, which I'm keeping, of course. Yeah. That's where I keep a lot of stuff. But anyway, 100 square meter lab. Fran says she needs she's always had like 2,000 square feet, which is about 190, square meters, which is double my new lab.
But she's got production as well, though, isn't she?
She's got production for her Frantone pedals and effects stuff, and she does and all sorts of.
And the thing about production is that you not only need the space, but it needs to be fairly well organised as well.
Yes, that's it. So what size is your space? Like you have a house, right? And your lab is in your house, I presume.
Yeah, I've got. The reason I bought this house is it had a big double garage out the back. So I converted that into a garage just big enough to put the car in, and the rest was workshop. So I had like the inner wall built in.
Oh, you put your car in there as well?
And I then actually
what a waste of space.
I extended a little bit out as well. But it's size-wise, looking at probably maybe 4 by 10 meters, something like that. But
okay, so it's about the size of my lab, 50 square meters. Yeah,
and obviously it's very well packed. But also, I've got secondary storage space in the house. I've got a conservatory and an attic, and the whole back room is just full of shelving. And a lot of that is just like boxes from old projects. Like say once I've done a project, it's like the spare PCBs, the test jigs, whatever. Because there's a reasonable chance that I might. What quite often happens is that a new project will come along that's maybe similar, so I'll just use these boards as a demo to the customer.
Of course,
or the spares and so on, and say there's other.
And you've got to keep those. You can't throw them out.
Well, I mean, I could throw them out. Yeah, they're obviously absolutely zero use to anybody else, and possibly of use to me. So it would be silly to throw those out. Because Sod's Law said somebody would come along.
Totally.
Sometimes even just silly things like, if I just prototyping something, I just need a board that's got, say, a pick and an SD card socket on it. I've probably done something like that in the past, and I can just pull the board out and use that as a prototyping board. Just things like that. It's really useful to do. And so the other stuff is just general, just big crate of mains cables, big crate of power supplies, that sort of stuff. And there's there's various other things. But I do get quite ruthless. Stuff goes out of the workshop fairly quickly into intermediate storage. And I'm not a I haven't really inherited I sort of inherited my father's "it might come in useful" gene, but I've learned to temper that with I just there comes a point where the bench gets so messy I've got to just clear everything out, and it's well enough organised that there is a place for everything, therefore it's fairly easy to clean up. I actually did a video about workshop organisation a while ago that was actually quite popular.
Yeah, I saw that, but I don't think we saw your wider workshop, did we?
Well, there was the panorama that I think.
Oh, okay, right.
But, and like for example, the PCB tanks went out to make way for the pick and place machine, so I still have the PCB tanks in the conservatory, but they get very little use these days.
I was going to say, do you bother making your own? You wouldn't, would you?
It's things like if I just suddenly need like a 1mm pitch breakout board for something, or something just really quick.
You can have it
exactly.
in an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's right.
And just having them, there's a big difference between having tanks set up ready to go than having to pull everything out of the cupboard and dick about. That's quite a big difference in terms of usefulness. So the tanks are there literally. All I need to do is when I start doing the layout, I'll press the button to start it heating up. I'll do the layout, print it on laser printer, expose it, and then it's done. But it's only like really simple stuff. Like breakout boards are probably the thing I use it for more than anything else, actually.
Yep. Otherwise, you can wait, 3-4 days, 2-3 days, or whatever.
Quite a good PCB company up the road with all. If he's not busy, I can get him girded by 11, and he'll ship out the same day. And if and they're close, if it's probably an hour's drive each way, if I want to go and pick them up, and that's like £200 for a panel. So it's really not that expensive.
That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's definitely.
Yeah.
As in what size panel?
Well, it's the cost of processing the panel, so it doesn't really, like I said, 12-inch square panel or whatever. Yeah, it's almost all just the processing time rather than the physical, the material.
Nice.
But also he'll he's quite good in I can have throttle stuff like say if on a board that's got two different resist colours on it and it's on a 0.8 with 2 ounce copper. It's one of the old school shop. He's been around there for like 30 years or so, and they'll just do it.
Got it. Yep, I've known a few of those.
Online ordering thing.
They die in their shop. Yeah.
the highest tech
80 and they're still
they get is that when you send them an order, he will just send an email back to acknowledge that he's received it. That is the limit of their automatic. That was only after I complained. Look, I send you off an order, and yes, they do normally come, but it will be nice to actually know that you have received it.
Right.
And if it's going to be he'll tell you that look, I couldn't get this out today, and he'll tell you. Rather than just not delivering, which obviously is really important if you've got an urgent job on that you can prepare and reschedule things. So,
Nice. All right, so shall we finish up with some news items?
Yeah, can do.
What did you want to talk about?
Well, there's let's go for the quick ones. Something I saw today which I thought was really cool. The world's shortest scheduled flight is potentially going electric. This is in one of the Scottish Islands, where it's the world's shortest scheduled flight, which is about slightly over 1 minute, including taxiing.
Oh, what?
It's like a 1 mile hop between islands, and they're now talking.
Oh, okay, right. That's probably it's like a cheap pick and place machine. There's very few niches where electric makes sense. If you look at the envelope of usability. Of the weight of the batteries versus the power you need versus the flight time and all that sort of stuff, there's a very narrow window where
and of course,
electric planes are useful.
They've got plenty of wind power, so they could actually have literally a completely environmentally neutral flight service.
So it comes up, charges it up from the wind power.
I think they're talking about modifying the existing plane rather than doing a custom one. So it was quite an interesting one.
Got it.
A nice way entering into that. And I think it's in Norway or one of the Scandinavian countries. I think is doing some work on it because I think they've got lots of islands and so on. But it's quite interesting.
That'd be
start off on a really easy situation where actually you could actually do it without spending a fortune. I mean, you could probably almost do that from like stuff you can buy from Hobby King.
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably.
Obviously, you've got the whole approvals issue, but
the pesky approval thing.
The other one, which I just found totally hilarious. This was on news a while ago. Apparently, it cost Apple something of over $3 billion for warranty fraud when they opened their Apple stores in China, and they would get people just buying the phones, stripping them for parts, and returning them under warranty.
Which, I mean, what?
And literally there'll be guys with suitcases full of phones just returning them, and they're wondering why they're getting these 60% return rates. But purely the fact that Apple makes it so difficult for people to repair stuff, I just find it hilarious. I think, good on the Chinese guys, frankly. If you can't buy the parts, shit will happen,
That's terrific. Anyway, people, don't get excited about you're going to be flying from Sydney to London on a battery power. Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
But it was quite a nice little niche solution. But
it's neat.
Yeah, Boston Dynamics again.
The robots that let's
dogs.
Just.
But the other thing is, there's a UK guy that does some really nice, neat projects called James Bruton. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's actually doing what he's calling Open Dog, which is like an open source robotic dog, which is all 3D printed and machined and so on. And that is like going through all the inverse kinematics and everything. So that looks quite interesting. Yep. It's on like about part 11 now, but that's it's not walking, but it's now standing and bending and tilting and turning.
It looks pretty big and impressive.
Big and heavy, but that's quite good. A couple of just very quick links. One thing which I found really handy, I think it's been discussed on the forum, the online Gerber viewer.
Oh, yes.
PCBXPRT.com, where literally you just drag a zip of all your Gerbers onto it, and it'll give you a preview, which I thought was just, and it works actually quite nicely. It's just quite a handy little tool. The other thing,
excellent. We'll link it in.
The other thing, again, this is a featured Hackaday we discussed a little bit before, and we did before we came on. The JITX PCB service. I don't quite understand what it is, but it's
so they make PCBs, do they? And they're getting into the assembly business.
They do PCB layout, and they say they've got these AI tools that they use to. They say they'll design a for $3,000 in 24 hours. They will design your PCB. As long as, I think the criteria are fewer than 50 components, 20 unique components, less than 250 pins, less than 3 amps, less than 500 megahertz, less than 20 watts total. I can just see I can see so many problems around that. Like, how do you specify it? But the thing is that
it's ridiculous.
Basically, they're pushing this as a prototyping service. They've got this hilarious video. I'm not sure it's on the website or link. It's certainly linked from the Hackaday article about saying, I think that they got like this student intern that did this project as a case study, and it was this gate control that's got NFC and web interface and all this sort of stuff. And they say, well, you could prototype this using all these breakout boards and the plug-in prototype boards, but they suffer from bad connections and stuff and whatever, and so let us design a PCB for your prototype, completely missing that the entire point of a prototype is you can change it easily. And then when you order your PCB from that, you can be writing the firmware while you're waiting for the PCB to get back. It just looks, maybe I'm totally misunderstanding what they're trying to sell. I suspect they're targeting all the Silicon Valley startups wanting to turn around their
startups and stuff. And they're trying to extract $3,000 from each one, and we'll prototype your board. But people don't realise how much to-in and throw-in is involved in even doing a prototype board. They may come back with a design and then in 24 hours, and then you go, well, no, I want to, make these changes, and then what do? Charge you another $3,000? I don't know. And what if he just comes back and it just doesn't work? And I can see it's a whole can of worms, frankly. It's just, it's and it's not cheap. It's not like it's $300. It's $3,000. That's it's like 3,000. Like, it's not unusual for that sort of cost to get a professional PCB designer to
just
lay out
to do that
board,
in 24 hours. So, all it takes is one query back to the customer, and your 24 hours is gone.
Yeah, no, you've blown. It's gone. Yeah, exactly. Single query. There's some wankery going on here, and artificial intelligence to do
having
your
said
routing.
That, I think. Auto routing is, we'll agree, it can work in some circumstances. But if someone were to, for example, throw GPUs and some AI at an auto, start an AI, just show it like thousands of good board layouts and throw some GPU resources at it, I think maybe something useful could come out of it.
Maybe. but it's still going to need it's 90% placement.
Yeah, absolutely.
PCB layout is 90%
I think
placement.
Scope for at least some interactive assistance with placement, like so you drag stuff around and it colours, according to connection density and so on. I think that's maybe potentially useful, but
it's just it's like. Yeah, no, look, I was a former professional, full-time professional PCB designer, and I have used auto routing, but in niche circumstances. I go, look, these are all digital. They're not, length, is not a problem, and you don't have to match anything. Yeah. So I'll just let it go. Yeah. It'll be good enough, And it's like, some cases there's niche uses, but it takes you to do a proper auto routing thing. It takes you just as long to set it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As it does to,
because for example, if you've got quite a lot of variants of one board, so all the setup is shared, I think that will probably be a really useful, good use case.
Oh, possibly. Yeah. Yep.
It's limited.
Just your brand new one-off whiz-bang widget, and if it's complicated and you want to go in there and auto route it properly, it takes you, it can take you a week to set up the constraints just to get it right. But if you're doing like a PC motherboard or something, then you would go to that effort.
Although you still a lot, but also you probably manually route quite a lot of it to start with, and then get it to clean up all the critical stuff.
The
stuff that's less critical. You wouldn't do it do all your wiggly length match stuff. And all that sort of stuff.
Well, you could use your interactive routers for that kind of stuff, which is a different tool. Yeah. It's kind of like you're in control. You're telling it where it's going, but it's calculating how many wiggles it needs, kind of thing to match the lengths and stuff like that. So they're incredibly useful. Time-saving tools, but my spidey sense tells me this is just wankery.
Yeah. And of course, so I don't think you mentioned on the last AMP the whole Supermicro implants nonsense story.
Oh, yes.
To which I have one simple statement: show me a photo.
Photos, or it didn't happen. Yep.
It's just, I think, it's ridiculous. I hope Micro Sue Bloomberg. That'll be hilarious.
Yeah. Well, there's maybe like a kernel of truth in it, but like it's maybe who knows, but it's like and then they showed a stock photo of a little RFI thing, it's filter and everything. One was analysing that of how it would work, and come on, no, it's just and like but that's what engineers like to do. Like we could sit here and come up with 10 different plausible ways you could potentially do this.
And the hardware implant probably wouldn't be one of them. Yes, you could do it that way, but there are much easier ways and less detectable ways of doing it.
It's just,
Actually, one thing
just nuts.
on my list here: cautionary tale of weird things that can go wrong unexpectedly. This is an installation we did a while ago.
Tell us.
Basically, it's a big installation in the States, so all the stuff was being manufactured in the UK, being shipped over to the US, and being like a final assembly and install over there. And basically what this was, it was a large, like meter diameter ring, custom aluminium extrusion with four 1.5 meter long lead strips that slot in from like two sides to basically give like a strip on the outside and a strip on the inside.
Okay.
Where we actually split it with 1.5 meter boards were a real pain to get made, so we split those in half. But so basically, on site at the installers, they were getting a few failures of the first driver on the board was dying. Obviously, we didn't have to. I don't think my customer was actually on site there. So this is the first problem is that the communication things. And they sent me a few photos of the setup. And I thought, well, is it ESD damage? You've got this great big long strip with a wire hanging off the end. It's quite plausible that if that's sitting on, say, a piece of foam and you pick up the wire, you're going to zap that chip.
And because it's the first one in the chain or whatever.
I've actually done a video on the Heathrow Airport thing. We had a similar issue with potting in like metal moulds and so on. So I assumed it was that. They sent me a few strips back to look at, and it say the input on the first chip had died. So I assumed, it's probably SD. And then later on, I think they got someone in locally that did a report on some of it. And actually, the issue turned out to be far more subtle than that. So these things had a controller board to output. Basically, it took like 48 volts in and they had four output sockets, which was like 5 volts and data for the LEDs. And the only socket that would fit in that space was some Molex Microfit, which is a 3mm pitch 2x2 plug-in. So you plug it in, it clicks down, and the connector is keyed, so you can't plug it in the wrong way round. No one saw any problem with that. It worked fine, whatever. What actually turned out to have happened was that, firstly, they subbed out the manufacture of these. They got like a company to make up a plug with a tail, then got soldered onto the strips, which is that's something you normally do. And what happened was that the connector housings they used, which weren't Molex, were much easier to plug into the connector the wrong way round because the keying was just a little bit smaller. So, because the Molex one, if you tried to plug it in the wrong way around, the keying meant it felt wrong. It felt very, very, that it wasn't meant to go this way. Apart from the fact that obviously the latch is in the wrong place. And I think the combination of that with the fact that this was being done by people, assembly workers that maybe not have cared about it as much as we did, and maybe just weren't trained. But the fact that you got this sort of multiple things, the fact it was being done remotely, the fact that the production connectors were very slightly different, and the fact that they were being assembled by people that may have not taken care to make sure it was plugged in the right way. meant that we finally figured out that I actually took one and said I actually plugged it in the wrong way around, and there was one orientation that would actually kill the first driver because which is one of those interesting. It's like the old air crash investigation sort of scenario where any one thing of those, it had to be the combination of all those factors. And if we'd have thought about, if we'd have seen that you could actually insert this connector the wrong way, I could have easily just put a protection resistor on that strip to fix that. So it's like saying earlier, every job you learn something. One is,
so does that mean you're going to put protection on every new product regardless of right? Right. Nice.
But it was one of those things where no one person was particularly to blame. It was like I always tell my customers that we're doing a one-off thing. You must have a contingency plan for stuff because shit will happen because we can't run through all this to find out all the problems. And I think that project was sufficiently big that they had the contingency, but it's just the annoying that you've got someone from the States, your product is failing in ways that you don't quite understand, on the other side of the world, and you've got obviously your end client is jumping up and down because it's delaying things, and it was just quite an interesting sort of cautionary tale of just this combination of different things that all conspired to make this happen. And also being wrong footed by because it wasn't until I actually got the production script back in my hand, and I think there was a comment from some of the guy over there, they're going to do a report on it all, going through the production issues and whatever, who just pointed out the fact that it was possible to plug this connector in, which had not occurred to me because the ones that I had were it felt wrong, but also I am used to plugging connectors in, whereas if you just go to a factory of assembly workers and say plug this connector in, they're not necessarily going to know what it's meant to feel different.
Like. I'll try and shove it in the wrong way, or
So that was quite an interesting cautionary tale.
Oh, that's great. Well, I hope this doesn't happen in China, where you're headed off to shortly.
The thing we're installing in China is basically the same sort of hardware that we did in Hong Kong, which is like the PCBs snapped together to make like a big shape. So at least the firmware is proven, most of the hardware is proven, but I'm sure there may be other issues that, China-related issues, I think. So, that's going to be a bit of an interesting experience.
And it's in the middle of nowhere, right?
It's not quite, It's Chengdu, which it's about the last big city as you head west before you hit the mountains where all the pandas live. Right. So it's a sensible sized city. I think there are some electronics companies I've seen. I think on LCSC there's been one or two companies there, something or other Chengdu Electronics. Right. So it's a moderately big city. It's not Shenzhen. It's like a tier 3, whereas Shenzhen and Beijing are tier 1. So it's not like sort of dirt road type of scenario. It's like a big shopping centre. So, but that's going to be an experience.
I can just picture you, Archie, transporting all your boards and critical boards and everything on the back of a push cart or something, down a dirt road.
I don't know.
No, it's not going to be that bad. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us again, Mike.
You're welcome.
It's been great.
Yeah. Good fun again.
We'll have to get Chris back on and do the usual thing again. Well, it's what you're averaging once a year,
something
maybe
like that. Yeah, I've not checked
something like that. Cool. Awesome. So, where can people find you if they haven't heard you before?
Mike's Electric Stuff. Google that. You'll find my website, which is some of it is shockingly out of date and old and outdated. YouTube mostly, Twitter. And I should just give a quick plug for something that might actually be a product.
Sure.
Which is one of these things. I make it for myself. I have no idea if it'll be useful to other people. I've done one quick video on this. It's basically a box to add Ethernet decoding to a mixed signal scope. This started off when a couple of installations I did fairly recently. I tend to use like RS485, but this had enough bandwidth that RS485 was going to be struggling, so I decided to start looking into Ethernet. I was using this the WizNet
I think I saw your video. Did you do a video on that? Yep. I saw part of that.
Using the WizNet chip, which is a nice solution because it doesn't, you don't have to learn like all the other people's stacks. So which is an easy solution. But I wanted to look at the timing of like the incoming packets and how fast I was servicing to make sure I was putting the data out quick enough. And with like 100 meg Ethernet, you can't just stick a scope on the line because it's just all, it looks like noise because of the encoding. There's no, you can't even detect when it's either when it's going. So I started playing around with an Ethernet PHY, which gives you like a data is valid thing. And then sort of started I stuck a tiny little FPGA on it to basically take that data and parallelize it. So you feed it into the parallel bus input with a single scope. So you get Ethernet decoding, which although obviously...
And then you use the logic analyzer in your scope to view them?
What it's doing is basically taking that serial Ethernet data and parallelizing it, and that's all it does. So that obviously... you can do that sort of stuff with Wireshark, but what you can't do is obviously relate it to other events and see the relative timings. But also,
could you reformat the Ethernet packets into, say, SPI so that you can?
No,
it's not fast
you're
enough.
getting parallel data at 12.5 megahertz.
So
your SPI will be 8 times that. So no, it's a short answer. It's just not fast enough.
Yeah, it's right. I was just going to, but then you could use the SPI decoding to see
but, I mean,
like
you
text
can
and stuff
use
like
just
that.
the cheap. You can just use the cheapo like PC logic analyzer, although you uses up all the channels. But if you've got like a 16-channel logic analyzer, my thinking was you could make. I didn't want to actually build out a full Ethernet analyzer, but the scope does most of what you need. It's got the triggering, it's got the memory, it's got the user interface. So for just a really simple little board. I don't yet know how useful this is going to be. So I've sort of done a board. What I'll probably do is I'll run off a panel, do another YouTube video, and say, okay, I'll sell the first few a nominal amount just to get people to use it, to feedback to whether they think it's actually useful. But I was actually speaking to my contacts with Ronan Schwartz at the show today, and he seemed to be, it's quite interesting because if you actually want Ethernet decoding on a scope, you're talking about very like Ronan Schwartz RTOs and
you're talking a $20,000
So if you can buy a little board for £50 or whatever to add it to a mixable scope, there must be some people that might find that useful. One thing I thought was possibly if you're trying to reverse engineer by looking at the timing of like packets coming out of something and the relative timing of like if you're trying to do glitching and that sort of thing, it might be interesting.
I'm telling you, just call it the Ether hack.
Well,
every hacker will buy one.
I've already registered etherdecode.com. I didn't look at Ether hack, but maybe.
Ether hack is better. I'm telling you, it'll be like HackRF and all the other hacky tools that are like become these industry standard tools for hackers everywhere. So
but obviously you still need to have a logic analyzer on a signal scope. I think that you can get some moderately. The problem is all the super cheap logic analyzers are only about 8-bit, so that's probably not much more useful than Wireshark because you don't get the relative timing. It's when you can do other channels that it gets interesting. But I think there are some fairly cheap 16-channel logic analyzers.
There would be.
But they're just not nearly as cheap as the 8-channel ones. But they're still like $100 or something. So it's still, if you need to do that, it's certainly a lot cheaper than buying like a Ronan Schwartz RTO or something.
Of course.
So,
awesome. Well, we look out for that. That's going to be great.
I'll send you one when I've got a few done.
Fantastic. Send in the mailbag.
The boards here. I'm just testing them. I think that board is... First, I thought I got the USB power socket the wrong way around. Then I realised that the one that I'd fitted to the board was like the actual connector. It was the inverted type, which has got like the wide bit at the top. So obviously the polarity was wrong. So fortunately, it was just literally I had made the prototype with the wrong connector rather than the PCB being wrong, which would have been really annoying.
Yep.
I think the rest of it, I've got enough of it running that I think it's usable. So when I get back from China, I'll knock a few out and see if anyone's interested.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks, mate. Well, have fun in China.
I will, and hopefully I'll get back in one piece and not end up in prison or something.
Something like that. All right. Okay. If you do, we'll start a GoFundMe to get you out.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, mate.
Good to talk to you.
Catch you next time.
Bye.